We're also actively building our first flight Fidelity Starship HLS cabin at Starbase.
This is it. SpaceX just lifted the curtain on the crew cabin of the Starship Human Landing System, the spacecraft that will return humans to the lunar surface for the first time in over 50 years. Not only interior details, but also development progress. That's exactly what we're digging into today. Let's dive in. At a recent NASA Artemis 3 briefing, Jessica Jensen, the woman who runs SpaceX's entire customer operations, said something quietly extraordinary.
The primary structure is assembled and prepared to be outfitted with key functional systems like avionics, power, life support systems, and more to come in the next few months.
Exciting, right? After a long stretch of silence, no updates, no timelines, nothing, SpaceX finally stepped in front of a room full of senior NASA officials and said this out loud. And what makes it hit differently this time is that she's not talking about another concept, not another polished 3D render. She's talking about a real Starship HLS cabin, built from real materials. And soon, it will be equipped with real life support systems, designed to carry real human beings to the moon for the first time since Apollo 17 left the lunar surface in 1972. And the best part is, we don't have to wait months, as Jessica suggested. Based on everything SpaceX, NASA, and multiple contractors have already revealed, we can begin exploring the inside of this spacecraft right now, and discover why Starship HLS may be the most revolutionary lunar lander humanity has ever built. But before we can step inside, we need to understand why the journey to that cabin is more complex than any trip in human history. Because Starship HLS is nothing like a plane or a car, you can't simply climb into the cabin and take off. To fly to the moon, it needs such an enormous amount of propellant that it's impossible to carry enough from the ground. The solution? Refuel in orbit. But orbital refueling isn't as simple as pulling into a gas station. It's an extraordinarily complex process, spanning weeks, and absolutely not safe to carry out with people sitting inside throughout. Only once the Starship depot has been fully fueled does Starship HLS launch. It flies up, docks with the depot to top off its tanks with that super-chilled propellant, and then waits in low Earth orbit. And then Orion arrives, carrying 2 NASA astronauts, launched aboard the SLS from Earth. The 2 spacecraft rendezvous and dock in LEO, one small, one enormous. Like a tiny boat lost in the middle of the ocean, suddenly spotting an aircraft carrier materializing through the fog. A 15-story building, floating in space, white as a blank sheet of paper. That is Starship HLS. Standing roughly 50 meters tall, 9 meters in diameter, its stainless steel hull coated in white thermal reflective paint to protect the cryogenic propellant inside from solar radiation. 5 large solar arrays spread open like enormous flower petals, each nearly 18 meters long, slowly rotating to capture maximum sunlight. Many people wonder whether deploying solar panels that large would slow the spacecraft down or push it off course. In reality, no. On Earth, if you open an umbrella into the wind, the drag can tear it apart. But in the vacuum of space, there's no air to create drag. So deploying the solar arrays has virtually no meaningful effect on the spacecraft's trajectory or velocity. Only after the solar panels have been deployed and are supplying stable power does Starship HLS begin its long journey to the moon. Orion maneuvers carefully. The 2 spacecraft approach nose to nose. The docking mechanism, designed to the modern androgynous standard, inherited from the Dragon 2 system, but optimized for the lunar environment, locks into place with a single metallic clunk that both astronauts will hear clearly through the hull. NASA has comprehensively tested this docking assembly at the Johnson Space Center across more than 200 different approach scenarios. Nothing is left to chance. The connecting tunnel opens, and the astronaut steps through. This is the moment everyone needs to pay attention to. Stepping from Orion into Starship HLS is like stepping out of a compact car into a sprawling luxury mansion. Orion's pressurized cabin is under 9 cubic meters. Starship HLS offers an estimated 160 cubic meters of livable pressurized space, nearly 20 times more. That's not a typo, 20 times. The first thing you feel isn't technology. The first thing you feel is space. After days crammed inside Orion, sitting shoulder to shoulder, every piece of gear stowed tight, every movement calculated, stepping into HLS is stepping into something that feels almost like freedom. High ceilings, cool, clean, steady air, warm artificial light washing evenly across the walls from LED strips running all the way around. They'll spend those first days just settling in, getting to know their temporary home. One side of the cabin opens into a spacious common area with a fold-away dining table and seating that's genuinely comfortable compared to anything Orion offered. And the food? No more cold energy bars or pouches of reconstituted powder. They can actually heat up real meals: rice, meat, vegetables, even some fresh items kept in refrigerated storage, using a compact but surprisingly capable galley system. In microgravity or under the moon's weak pull, eating becomes a much more pleasant experience. No more worrying about crumbs floating into your eyes. And above the dining area, set into the curved wall, is what SpaceX calls the bridge. It looks nothing like a traditional spacecraft cockpit. No rows of physical switches, no analog dials, no mechanical controls. Instead, large high-resolution touchscreens. And not just here. They're in the common area, outside each sleep cabin, flanking both airlocks, everywhere. The lead Starship software developer described it directly. The UI has to work for crew members doing completely different jobs. A commander reviewing descent trajectories, a flight surgeon checking life support telemetry, a geologist pulling up landing site maps. Same interface, same ship, just context switching, depending on who's looking. It's a completely different philosophy from Dragon, which had 3 fixed screens in a compact capsule built for one single job. Starship HLS is different in kind, not just in scale. Further back are the private sleep quarters. No more hanging a sleeping bag against the wall like in Orion. Starship HLS has individual crew cabins, compact but genuinely private, with fixed sleeping surfaces, dedicated sleep restraints, and just enough personal space for each astronaut to decompress after a long shift. Sleeping a full, deep sleep on the moon, that's going to feel completely different from those restless nights in a cramped capsule. And to stay in shape, they train every day. The exercise area is cleverly designed around space-efficient, multi-purpose equipment. A treadmill built for low-gravity environments, a rowing machine, resistance bands, all working to fight the muscle and bone loss that's plagued astronauts on long-duration missions. When they're done, they can clean up with a hygiene system that's a genuine step up from anything Apollo era: recycled water, real privacy. Through all of this, the ECLSS, the Environmental Control and Life Support System, runs quietly in the background. And we're not talking about the bare-bones setup from the old Apollo lunar module, where astronauts had a few lithium hydroxide canisters to scrub CO2 and a pair of silver-zinc batteries to power the entire spacecraft for a grand total of 2 or 3 days. This is a full closed-loop system: CO2 scrubbing, automatic pressure regulation, humidity control, continuous atmospheric sensors, monitoring every breath they take. SpaceX actually tested this with 4 people inside a full-scale cabin mock-up in Hawthorne, California, running continuously for a full 7 days, eating, sleeping, exercising, the whole thing. 7 days. That's also exactly how long Artemis 4 plans to stay on the moon. But before any of that begins, the ship still has to land. At around 100 meters above the surface, HLS would have already fired up its secondary thrusters. Small gaseous propellant jets mounted high on the hull rather than at the base. The 6 main Raptor engines, so powerful that even at their lowest throttle setting, they'd blast the lunar regolith into a storm of razor-sharp particles, are shut down. The smaller auxiliary thrusters take over, easing the spacecraft down as gently as a helicopter. The 4 landing legs had already deployed. Ranging sensors feed continuous data to the flight computer. The crew watches, they verify, but the ship lands itself, and SpaceX is betting everything on its software. And then, touchdown. A gentle contact. So gentle that the astronauts inside might not feel it at first. But the computer knows, the sensors know. And after a few seconds, the display lights up. Touchdown confirmed. Before anyone sets foot on the surface, there's one more thing to do. Check systems, run through procedures, and suit up. And this is where you start to understand why HLS's 2 airlocks are a stroke of engineering genius. The old Apollo lunar module had no airlock at all. To go outside, the crew had to depressurize the entire cabin down to 0, suit up inside, climb out through a hatch on top of the cockpit, crawl out, and then descend a ladder, all while wearing a bulky pressurized spacesuit. Every single EVA was a technical circus act, and every time they came back, they dragged in a cloud of lunar regolith dust, stuff as sharp as shattered glass, straight into their living space. Starship HLS has 2 separate airlocks, each around 13 cubic meters. Both astronauts can go in and out simultaneously without depressurizing the main cabin at all. Inside each airlock, there's enough room to fully don and doff the Axiom suit, Axiom Space's next-generation EVA suit developed specifically for Artemis, along with a dedicated PLSS rack for the backpack life support unit. Handholds positioned precisely based on ergonomics research and data ports that tie directly into the ship's comm systems. 2 NASA astronauts have actually tested this airlock mock-up at Hawthorne in person, fully suited, running through every motion, every maneuver, every handhold, not for a pretty slide and a status report, but because their lives depend on every single detail. And below the airlock, something you've never seen on any landing vehicle in history, an elevator. The distance from the HLS cabin down to the lunar surface is about 35 meters, the equivalent of climbing from the ground floor to the 12th floor of a building. In a heavy, rigid EVA suit with a PLSS strapped to your back, climbing a folding ladder bolted to the outside of the hull is not a great idea, especially when you're on the moon for the first time in your life, and your entire nervous system is trying to make sense of gravity that's only 1/6 of what you've known your whole life. So, SpaceX designed an elevator, nothing fancy, more like an industrial cage lift, or what people often describe as a shark cage, but solid, reliable, and built to do exactly one thing: get astronauts and equipment down to the surface safely. The airlock door opens. The astronaut steps into the cage. The mechanism begins its slow descent. This is a moment that no computer simulation can fully capture. As the elevator descends, the lunar surface rises to meet you, the ash gray of the regolith, scattered small craters, the enormous shadow of Starship HLS stretching out ahead, and in the distance, the horizon curves because the moon is smaller than Earth against a sky of absolute black. No atmosphere, no scattered light, just the sun blazing like a white diamond hanging in the void.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
And when do chamber pressures